Hello, guys. It's Dr. Patrick Price, and welcome to the Body Detective Show. Today, welcome my guest, Imanee Mamalution. And I have her book out here today, The Presence of Soil. It can be found right here on her website or on Amazon.com. Guys, this show today especially is a great show because all you mothers out there today, all the moms, especially the single moms, this is a show for you, but especially the book for you. Guys, looking at farming, looking at the drug industry, looking at the food industry, looking at what it's like just being a single mom raising children today in society. Imanee has taken a history lesson from the early 1900s and unbound the information and gave you the truth from many other authors that she studied as well and did her own research. But find out today how we got to where we are, with all the separation, the families separate in the homes today, and what's happened to the food industry. Because our food, all the genetic manipulation you see today in the foods, and how do we get back to where we once were? Well, Imanee has a solution for us today. Please watch the show. She's going to give you some good updates about her life, how she got to where she is, and what all you mothers out there can do today to gain back the foundation of the family. So I'm Dr. Patrick Price, and join me today for the show. We have a good one for you. So anyway,
Yeah.
so I have Imanee and help me make sure I say it. Mamalution,
Mama Lucian. Mama
Mamalution,
Lucian.
Imanee Mamalution today for our show, guys. And I'm going to introduce her, just asking her, who is Imanee Mamalution?
Well, thank you for the invitation to be here. So I am first and foremost a mother, and I've had 4 birth daughters that were born at home that I homeschooled and raised naturally, and I had 2 stepchildren in that mix. So my daughters, my 5 daughters now are between 19 and 30, and I would say that my path as a mother has been really significant in shaping me and putting me on this path to really understanding what I kind of speak about is connecting all the dots. Like, why are we here? What is, I've always had a clear idea about my mission since I was very young, and just trying to understand more and more of that. And I think as we get older, it continues to reveal itself. So first and foremost, mother, but I've done a variety of entrepreneurial things and efforts to educate myself and my children. I ran an organic cafe for a decade where I homeschooled my children. That was our classroom. I've been involved with holistic kind of living and looking for the most nutrient dense, mineral rich foods on the planet, which has led me to really look at where our food comes from and the glyphosate issue. And I've just been a really passionate learner, really trying to understand, I would say, this bigger picture and my purpose and how I can fulfill that, which is around education and empowerment.
Well, I like how you wrote your book. You basically come at it as from a mother's standpoint, because the moms today definitely have changed the moms yesterday. I mean, a woman today can look at just being a housewife or just being a mother as like it's something weak, that you don't have this power. But I always revert back to my mom, who's 91. She's the strongest woman you ever meet, my mother. And all she was a housewife. She raised 4 kids, and she became a school teacher later. But there was nothing wrong with her in any way as far as finding a weakness. And even to this day at 91, there are no weaknesses. So speaking out to moms today about being a mom, I think that's probably one of the most important things is reaching mothers again, because I see them in my office. And the one thing that I do have to say about moms is I don't see moms have the control as far as the discipline over their children at all anymore. And anybody that I see, very few people have that disciplinary where they tell their kids what to eat, what to drink, how to be respectful, how to talk to adults. And I see that missing society today. Do you see like this as well?
Yeah, that's a really good question. I was just having a conversation the other day about this role of mothers and how through the feminist movement, really, in the propaganda around that, we've lost our connection to that role of mothering, right? And being a mother
Right.
and seeing it as strength, because I think it was portrayed as, not being strength. I mean, we know that we can do it, but we have to do everything and do everything really well. So I think that what's happened is that it's really confused a lot of women and those becoming mothers. What is our role exactly, and how do we balance that out? I think that for me personally, it was my navigation in trying to find ways to provide structure for my children that would give them freedom. So how do we honor that child as a unique individual? And part of the schooling I did was really around unschooling and them finding and discovering their own passions and interests. But how do we maintain that sense of structure? And our culture has really enabled, and I think you could probably agree with this, Dr. Price, but like this really kind of narcissistic programming around being the center of the world and expecting, especially with technology and the way that we in the States, want everything, right? Quick solutions. So I think there's a lot of things that contribute to the ways parents have shifted, but I also think there's a lot of guilt and shame and a lot of confusion around even who's parenting their children. I mean, we have the institutional schools there's a lot of programming that has gone in for both the children and the parents.
Right, right. It's telling the kids it's like you're in charge and your parents aren't very smart. So go. So if you have some answer that you need, don't listen to your parents. Go to the internet. You'll get it there. That seems to be where the questions go, is online. So I have to shake my head because I was
Yeah.
raised. My parents weren't super strict, but just to see today, just within my own time, within my own era, how much has changed. It's really shocking. But to see mothers losing their power, and what I mean by that power is the kids are telling the moms, "Hey, this is what I'm going to eat. This is what shoes I'm putting on," and a parent is taken away from being a decision maker in a family, and I find that very bizarre behavior.
Mm.
Mhm.
Yeah, I mean, and that's actually one of the things I speak about in my book is really the influence of consumerism and
Mhm.
the media. I mean, I think that again, this programming that we were subjected to our own era, but it's definitely been exaggerated and intensified, right? I mean, they are targeting the youth as the largest consumer. It used to be women, and women staying home with their families because they were the one doing most of the consuming and buying of things for the household. But as consumerism has gotten out of control, they've targeted younger and younger ages, and they're
Right.
very influential at those ages. And I think one of the things that we have neglected to do as parents is to stand up to that. And I think we didn't probably, or our parents and these generations didn't understand how insidious the grip was. And also, which I'm sure you see in your practice, is like the dopamine and everything that's released from even all these social media platforms or all of the media that's bombarding us constantly. It's like we're on overload and overstimulated. There was a really good book that I referenced. I'm not sure if you read it, but The Hijacking of the American Mind, which really breaks down
No, I
this
didn't
kind of
see that.
addictive process around it's pretty powerful to see what is intentionally being done to our children and how important it is as parents that we actually stand up and have that consciousness ourselves to do our own reprogramming so that we can be strong enough for our children. But it is definitely challenging in these current times to be
Mhm.
strong. I mean, the programs out there around controlled opposition, around having people being at controversy with each other, right? And
Mhm.
that's gone into our homes. That
Mhm.
has not just been in the political realm. They've taken that program and that intention into our homes to divide families because they know how powerful and strong families are
Right.
when they're united.
I mean,
Communities.
it's very strange. You say that word, controlled opposition. I get that word a lot. In fact, MK Ultra, all the old programs that we know about. I mean, it seems like it's very much in operation now because I have never seen, and like what you're saying, is how like children saying, "I'm not coming into your house unless you've had the shot thing." It's like, "I'm not coming to see you unless this. I'm not going to do this," and they're giving demand to the parents, and then even husband and wife are going to these demands in their own house, and so you're seeing
Mhm.
complete division of the family at every level. I don't know what the solution is. I don't know where they even begin at. Besides, I tell people turn off the TV. That would be a start. if you're going to watch something online, watch things that of interest to you, like especially the messages that you're giving here today. So let me ask you a question. So what
Yeah.
do you think is most important right now for a mom, for any, because I'm sure plenty of mothers will be watching this show today, is what do you think is number one most
Mm.
important that parents, let's say moms, need to address first with their kids? Is it their food, their education, certain thinking process? What do you think is the number one most important thing for a mother to address at home right now?
Mm.
I know there's a
Well, I
lot.
think you actually hit it on the nail on the head as far as there is, but exposure to media, because younger and younger children are being exposed to technology
Mhm.
as ways to divert our children and kind of be our babysitters, the modern day babysitter. And I think that technology, giving technology and what it does to a child's brain at those young ages is completely damaging. And then it sets you up for that, what we were just describing, right? That sort of opposition.
Right, right. Mhm.
I was motivated to homeschool my children so that I could make sure that they were eating the foods that I wanted them to eat. It sounds kind of, I had a cafe at that point, so that was that I could feed my children and use that sort of as part of our curriculum. So I think keeping your children as close to you as you can. And you brought up this kind of really intense situation for a lot of mothers that I've talked to, or their grandchildren or their partners around different decisions. And I think it is incredibly painful that for me personally, what I have chosen to do with my family is to keep them as close as I can and to not venture into all of the topics that are out there that would push my children further away from me. So it's about keeping them as close as possible. So I think that's easier to do when they're younger and not grown adults. But when we establish a really strong foundation, like what you described with your family, your mother, and that relationship, that we have more of an ability to have influence. But I think we also have to balance out respecting who they are as people, but making sure that we're able to have some kind of connection with them.
Right, right. So when I go to the Middle East, like I see with my wife's family, which is now also my family, when I go over there, I watch when the kids walk in the door. It doesn't matter who's in the home. The kids still are trained the old way out of respect. They come right past me, right past everyone, and they go to the oldest person in the house, usually the grandparents. They go and they kiss them on the hand, and they greet grandmother, they greet grandfather, and it's like a pecking order. They go grandparents, parents, then aunts and uncles, then cousins, whoever. And this is the ritual greeting that in a way that how I was raised as a kid. You come in, you say hello to the grandparents first. So you always the elders you come to. And I think that's another part of the aspect we lost is our tribal ways. We all were tribal ways at some time, is the pecking order, showing that respect to the elders and understanding that they're the ones that carry the knowledge and the wisdom. And you don't need the internet. Just go talk to grandma or grandpa. They could tell you stories about all kinds of things from the past. And so that's another aspect I think we've lost is the importance of the
Sure.
grandparents connected to the family.
Yeah, in particular here in the States, because we have fragmented families, right? We have high levels of divorce. We have families that have moved away. So a lot of children don't even have a connection to those multiple generations.
Right,
And then
right.
again, we're in classrooms where children are with their own age, right? But I think some of that comes down to what are our values and what are the values we instill in our children in our household,
Mhm.
whether however they come. I mean, now we've come from a generation where a lot of those values maybe came from organized religion, but I think we can instill these values, especially when it comes to respect for the self and others and our elders, with how we model that. But there has been this gradual breakdown, and it
Mhm.
is, it is a question of what do we do? I think right now people are returning back to some of the other ways of doing things and being able to spend more time with each other with the last couple of years and really reevaluate what are their values, what are their priorities. And I mean, not everyone, but there are a lot of people who have taken this opportunity for that kind of reflection.
Yeah, now, first of all, I have to congratulate you on being like a mother, a single mother in a way. It's not like you didn't have a lot of help coming up. Is when I see someone like just though they a mother who's raising her kids all by herself, no financial help, has her career that she has to work at herself, and she basically runs everything and taking care of those two kids. I have to say, being a mom and raising just one kid, I had a hard enough time just raising myself growing up. I don't see how mothers do that. I mean, where do you tell mothers to get the strength to do something like that? Where where would you say this power comes from?
Yeah, I think that's some kind of connection to source and however you define that, like really having that. Well, what was activated for me when I was pregnant with my first daughter was some kind of how I raised my children with instinct intact. There was some kind of intuitive aspect. And there is this thing that mothers do, right, for their children. It's kind of this selfless space that we get into to protect our young. And I do think that that's activated in most women, not all, because we have see the results of that. But for me, that was definitely my path, and it was strengthened. And I didn't have my children weren't raised by grandparents. They were raised by me, and I brought other people into our community for support. I've always been really focused on, building out this kind of network or community so that we can. There are a lot of single moms out there, and I was in that situation through 2 divorces and raising my children. So it is not easy. You kind of have to pull in this strength, probably similar to what you do in your martial arts practice.
Right.
It was like kind of like a discipline or a meditation.
Right.
I say, I remember you telling me your story where you meditated, those 5 hours a day. For me, it was like my mastery came from 3 decades of bringing myself back to center over and over again after being distracted, in a matter of minutes. But it's about coming back to center over and over again. And that's the practice.
Yeah, because I get, as far as my martial arts school, I get a lot of these kids from single moms into the school. The mothers take them because they don't have a male influence. And we have a bunch of good guys, older guys who help me run my school. And so they come in, they also, especially young men, young boys, even the kids, they get that influence of the male influence because that mother's doing everything, right? And so they come in, they get that kind of discipline
so
that
important.
teaches them that respect, teaches them how to believe in themselves as well. And you really watch a change in them when that happens. And so I always tell people, if you don't have, like a single mother out there, if you don't have that kind of support, do join like a martial arts school. Join something in your community where you find other strong men that, of course, that you approve of, and see that they're teaching your young kids the right things. And to me, it always was the martial arts schools. I always had very strong teachers at the schools, and so we try to reflect that back. Would you recommend something like that to other mothers to find other support for them, for their kids when they're on their own?
Oh, absolutely. And with more and more people educating their kids at home, and a lot of these, what we call these micro schools popping up, there's more opportunities for models or other mentors. We're doing that with my partner River, who you met through our Haven Earth network, where we're actually building out a skilled workforce, right? We teaching people, teaching particularly these young men, but our youngest person in our certified building course in the spring was a 14-year-old girl with her dad. And it was an incredible bonding experience, but teaching them how to grow their own food. There's homesteading and building, houses, healthy houses with hemp. So we're actually connecting people with what we're offering the programs and courses, but part of that is what we're seeing is this rites of passage for young men, many that need those role models. And we are actually, like you, bringing those people together and using that, funneling these young people into this so that they can be inspired and motivated and really get some of what's been missing, right? And it is hard to do everything. Like that's one of the things I learned as a mom is quickly, don't act like you know how to do everything. It's okay to ask for help, and also to have these other role models with people that have skills or resources that we can benefit from. I think this shift is really about how we can move into this new timeline, this new earth that we're building out from a place of togetherness. And so many families have been split apart in the last couple of years. So they're basically, a lot of people are finding their new families. And so this is a time for humanity to, there's a lot available out there. You just have to look for it and ask and be able to
join other
receive.
teams, right? Find you some other teams out there to join.
For sure.
Now, I want to bring up something. You brought up something in your book that I haven't heard of years ago. It's the twilight sleep. I know it's to change the subject for a second, but about women giving birth, the cesarean sections, these things, because I'm always a proponent of giving birth at home, right? Because they did it before, they can do it again, and mothers are just too scared these days to do it a lot. But I know plenty of them have done it just fine that I've met. But briefly tell mothers about this history, how we did. Scopolamine, that I know, when I hear this particular chemical, I know it is a torture technique. The CIA used to take scopolamine, inject it in someone's spine, and they'll tell the truth about anything to make it stop. Okay, so tell us about the twilight sleep for a second, if you don't mind. Yeah.
Well, birth is definitely one of my favorite topics, and really kind of how I really kind of reclaimed my own power as a woman. My mother was on twilight sleep when I was born.
Really?
So that was that generation of the.
Okay.
Yep. And I mean, I remember her. So I was her first. She was the first.
Tell others what it is, the twilight sleep.
Those
who don't know what it is, tell them what twilight sleep is.
So I mean, well, so that was I mean, there's been many drugs that they've used over the years with women, right, to help with their labor. I mean, you probably know more about it from a chemical standpoint than I do. What I know is that they were injecting it in women, which basically knocked them out so that they didn't remember anything. They didn't feel pain because they didn't have any memory of the birth.
Right.
So, and what would happen, and in my mother's case, you kind of go like lose control, right? So they would actually strap these women down to the tables to give birth because they were just high, or whatever that feeling is that was created, like out of their mind in a sense. So imagine, coming into the world with that drug in your body, because our babies come in with whatever drugs our mothers are given, when we're in labor. So that was part of my own fascination of looking at my own birth, forceps delivery, my mother in twilight sleep, strapped down, having no recall of anything. Now we've transitioned to women having some recollection, but looking for Pitocin and other things where they can be conscious, but still numbed out or not in pain, right? But I love that you brought up that we've been doing this forever as women, giving birth, and our bodies have a natural ability to do it. Otherwise we wouldn't be doing it. We wouldn't all be here. So it's something that we know we can do. And it's really, again, that fear propaganda around the idea of pain. And it's more about how we manage it and using different techniques, whether it's hypnobirthing or meditation or breathing. I mean, there are so many tools that we can use as women, but
even the position of birth, your position that you should be in, not lying on a table. Dr. Mick Hall I interviewed a while back. He talked about standing and squatting to deliver the baby,
Oh yeah. Women, I mean, there are videos out there that you can see women in other parts of the world. I would show these when I would do, childbirth education, just squatting down and giving birth in a matter of minutes. They just squat, and then they go on with their day. I mean, that's in other indigenous cultures, that is the ability to give birth. But again, we've hospitalized it. We've hooked women up to all kinds of monitors. As soon as they've entered the hospital, they're put in a wheelchair. So they've gotten in this mindset around what birth is. And we've only seen these exaggerated horror stories that have been on television or media around birth, right? When we took birth out of the home and started a medicalized model, that was intentional. That was to get rid of the midwives, to get rid of the homeopaths, to get rid of all those natural doctors. And we're still dealing with that today. But that was when the American Medical Association stepped in, right? And if you look at that timeline, and that's really what I had to do for myself. and that's kind of what drove me to even put my book together, is it was an effort to figure out, how did we get here? How did we
How did we
lose
get here? Right.
touch with this inner guidance, you know? So it was really important for me, and birth is a big piece of that. A lot of people who put together the dots don't think about birth and even the moment of conception. But if we really go back and we're conceiving our children consciously, and we're birthing them in a way that's natural and in a, you know, in alignment with that essence, that purity, we set ourselves up for a different kind of experience in our children.
Right. I watched a video actually today. I woke up and somehow I guess I must have watched something on my phone, and it showed how going just on your knees, your hands and knees, and how the position of the hips, it raised the sacrum. Me as a chiropractor was learning, wow, okay, they're right. When you put the hips in a certain position, it makes the sacrum lift, and that baby pops right out. And here's a baby being delivered live. A mother's on her hands and knees going, watch this. And she gets on her hands and knees, and boop, she actually delivers the baby into her own hands. I was like, wow. I mean,
Yeah.
I've never seen that before. Yeah.
Yeah.
So mothers get so scared. Those
Well,
mothers out there, those who watch, don't get
the
scared.
women that are
Yeah.
right.
I mean, let mothers know you survive, right? You survive giving delivering babies. So hey, right.
Yeah.
So let's
Four times.
Four times. Four times. So now moving past that, the baby's born, and so immediately we get introduced to all these chemicals, you know, that all the weed killers, all the glyphosate, even in the baby formulas now. I mean, let's talk about that for a moment, because that was really how I first got into a lot of books in the early 1900s. 1990s, sorry, 1992. I think I read a book about genetically modified foods and the chemicals, and so let's discuss that for a minute.
Jeffrey Smith.
Mm-hmm.
That was, I would say, we do have a lot of parallels. That was definitely a big awakening moment for me. I had just opened my cafe probably a year before, and really started understanding what they were doing with Monsanto and the glyphosate in the food, and how it was permeating everything, like every corner of the earth. And as a mother, it instilled quite a bit of fear, like that I would even be able to protect my children from eating these genetically modified foods. So I went on a quest, and that really did lead me down a lot of different paths as far as, you know, looking at healthier options, but really understanding the chemical revolution, which was at the same time as this in the early 1900s. That's why you said it. The 1900s is when all of these things started infiltrating into our world with Industrial Revolution, thinking that we were becoming more evolved, or, you know, becoming, you know, taking the pain out of birth and having fast foods and putting them in microwaves. Remember when we got the first microwaves? I mean, just these things that were part of what we were sold to be part of this, you know, better way of lifestyle. But it's actually been, in retrospect, so much of it has been what's making everybody so sick, and taking, you know, our food to decrease in its nutrient value in an effort to grow more food for people. We literally have food that is not only not nutrient rich in any vitamins and minerals, it's actually poisonous for our children. And I'm sure you've seen children with a number of allergies, that children are younger and younger ages, and all of the other hosts of things that come along when we're not feeding our children real food, packaged, processed, genetically modified food.
Genetically modified has gotten where a lot of people have just kind of just let it skip past them and said, well, it must be good for you. But really, really, it is not. That never has changed. I mean, like you said in your book, about 75% the quality of nutrients you get is lost compared to what it was back, say, in my mother's day. But one thing that I know about the food that was so specific years ago is all those little nutrients in soil, those live bacteria get sucked up into the plant. You eat the plant, you get the bacteria. You don't need probiotics. But today, since we sanitize the soils, we basically kill all those bacteria in the soil. We sanitize it. And so you have no good bugs coming into your body, so you have to take probiotics. And that's where I think you're in your book, you talk about how mothers need to know about real food. Well, real food has real bacteria in it as well. And so the solutions today is very limited to even getting organic farming. They're still using, I have friends who are farmers, they're still using tons of chemicals. and almost they're forced to in a way. So I guess one of the solutions is really a lot of us need to start growing our own foods or get together co-ops and other people and grow certain foods in our future. What's your feel on that?
Oh, absolutely. It's my number one focus. Talking about the soil, which is why I called my book The Absence Presence of Soil. It was this
Right.
realization that when there's no soil, humanity doesn't survive. And you're talking about that
Right.
microbial, and the mycelium in the soil that we have, killed in creating this sterile soil. Zach Bush talks about this a
Mhm.
lot, and what he's done with educating people about glyphosate. There's one of the things that really struck me was he was talking about what it does in the body. It actually breaks down our cellular knowing, that we kind of forget who we are. And if you think about it, you see people that are eating this, what we call dead food, that kind of are directionless, right? But when you start infusing your body with the vitamins and minerals and nutrients and real food, the fresh foods, and not the poisons on them, you kind of come alive. And you have, you're remembering, you're clear. I know you know all of this with all the stuff that you teach around detox. So it's just a complete vast difference in people. But my focus today is really around homesteading and food security and helping people shift back. And again, that's that platform that we've done where we have groups on there where people are learning to homestead or grow their own food. Or I'm really obsessed with the mitt lighter gardening method right now. So I'm taking
What's it
classes
called?
and learning the mitt lighter gardening
What is
method.
that?
It's a certain method. This guy Mitt Lighter created this way of growing food that's nutrient dense, mineral rich, and also very efficient and condensed, so you can have maximum production. Because we're looking at how much food do we really need to grow to feed a family of 4 or to feed a community of 30 people, 25 to 30 people a year. It's much more than we know. It's not just this kind of gardening on the side, it's like we're shifting at what do those equations look like. So that's a lot of what we're teaching people now on the platform and working with clients who are returning to the land and looking to start really figuring out how to grow food.
Yeah, actually, you
Like
talked
we
about
used to, like
no-till.
our parents.
Yeah, you talked about
Yeah.
no-till farming too, right?
Yeah, and there's so, yep, no-till farming. As far as what people are doing to the soil and all these things, it's just like you said, a lot of the organic farmers are still doing things that aren't actually good for the soil, or they're using chemicals. So a lot of them are tilling. So there's new information coming out. That's really old information, but this regenerative agricultural movement, if people look up around that, there's so many people out there that are starting to teach that and understand the importance of how we're taking care of our soil. So that's a lot in that gardening method. It really does come down to what's in our soil.
Because like I look at a community, if you live in a neighborhood, the neighbors could get together and have some kind of gardening system set up. They would just need a consultant like anything else, right? And so now, what is your feel on aquaponics? I had that kind of system on my patio here. What do you, how do you like?
Oh yeah, I'm familiar with it, but the mitt lighter gardening method has beds in soil. They use actually kind of dust, and they do use a kind of an aquaponic system, but it's
Okay.
more of a way of a watering system. So you would find it really interesting, but it has very specifics. It's very specific to get the results. So that is one of the things that they implement. I mean, water is a big issue, right? And the quality of water we put in our bodies, but how are we looking at that as a resource as we move forward into these years? Because there's a lot of people that want to control our water supply. We're in Texas right now, and that water is a big issue. There's so many farmers dealing with drought. So we have to look at these creative ways for water catchment and ways to water our food, because we're going to need the water to grow the food.
Now look
But
at
I do think food security. But I think food security is the single biggest issue of this generation.
Yeah. Now look at we live in a condo now, and they have a whole area that's like a glassed off area that no one even always sits in. They got a bunch of plants in there, and I went to the association and go, why don't we put a garden in there? And they looked at me like I'm from another planet. And finally, I got to the board members going, look, all the residents in this community, that is enough room to build a garden to feed most of us here, and we could come up with a solution. And like in condos, growing them on the roof. I see some places when I was in the Middle East, they grow their whole garden systems upstairs, right? where you just need to get the water there, but all the residents could take turns coming in and taking care of plants, all put their time in, and then you could basically feed almost this whole building. You have the room to do it.
Yeah.
And I think that is our future, is wherever
And
we
what
live, is developing a system that works with where we are.
For sure, and it's a great educational model. So that is really our whole model, is teaching people, educating them as we're building these things out, right? That's part of the power, and like giving people, putting it back in the hands of the people.
Yeah, but until people have something taken away from them, until your freedoms, your rights, or you go to the store again and then there's just not enough food or not enough quality food, I think only then, when we go without in this country in particular, will people open their eyes, go, well, maybe we should do something different. Because unless you're going with scarcity, you just may go about your daily life and not be concerned about these things. But I'm sure, like you, being a visionary, you see that our future, this could be an issue. Tell me if I'm wrong.
Oh, I think it's definitely an issue for sure.
It's-
And I think other people are starting to see that it's going to be an issue. There's a lot happening, and you can't always see it in all the circumstances, but I think the last 2 years has shed some light, and people are going into the grocery store. They're not having access to things the way we have before in the past. And I think that's encouraging people to actually start thinking about it and considering. In the people that I'm around, there are a lot more people homesteading and growing food, that are really making that effort to do that, that are seeing into the future. So I think that is, but we need more. We need more people moving in that direction, for sure.
You've seen all the farmers recently in the different countries, all with their tractors lining up. You've seen that in the news.
Oh yeah,
I mean, when
yeah,
farmers start getting upset, guys, you better wake up. You better look around and say, wait a minute, the farmers aren't going to be farming anymore. So what's going to happen? So that's going to
yeah,
trickle right over here to this country, I'm sure, sooner or later. So,
for sure. And go ahead.
so besides planning, it's definitely a subject we talk about all day. Um, let's go to another area that talking about a mother, and I'm going to relate back to your book. What's another area that's important for moms that are watching this that they need to look into next for their children?
Well, I mean, we touched on the education, and I think that if they're looking to have that kind of solid connection that we're talking about earlier, I think there are a lot more opportunities for how we educate our children, and that's one of the best ways to have the influence and instill those values that we're talking about, and not just handing our education over. So there's so many. There's all these pandemic pods and micro schools that have come out. I think one of the things that I've heard, and I'm actually speaking on a homeschooling summit this week, that there's so many more things available than when I was homeschooling 20 years ago, that people are realizing that, one, it's not that you have to do it yourself. People are coming together. They're actually forming their own schools, just in the same way you said about forming a community garden. So I think it's the power is in us aligning with others that have those like-minded values, and really just taking action and doing it, and role modeling that for our children. That when we take action and we involve our children, then that's going to influence and impact them in a positive way.
So mothers watching this, it's important to listen what she has to say about your kids. If you're concerned about your kids' future, they need to be presently what's involved right in front of them at this moment. And all these, like you say, micro schools. I listened to a special forces guy. He set up his system run by military guys in the in Austin area. They're want to have the same disciplinary things that they grew up as a kid, so they just created their own school. And so what I know is I have plenty of friends right here in Houston, Texas, that have raised their kids, and they have not been to the regular institutional educational system, not one day, all the way through high school. And they have team sports, they have archery, they have football, they have basketball. They have all the things you'd have in a normal setting, except they've gotten away from the usual system of this mind control, turn the kids against their parents. And parents, if you can't see this happening right now, just think of how your kids are treating you. What kind of respect do your kids give you? Did they give you a loving respect as a parent, or are you having trouble and division in your own home? So if you can't see that happening in your own home right now, that's when you need to lift your eyes up from your own cell phone and take a look around what's happening to your own family. And remember, these schools are easy to get involved with. You got a lot of communities working together, like she's saying. And they're not only working together, they work together in their own little farming systems right here in Houston, Texas, guys. So let's move to another subject here,
Amazing.
because you got a lot of stuff, guys. If you don't, I got our book right here in front of me. Has a soul. Please get her book, because especially mothers out here, just listening to the edge. This is like a history lesson. When you start from the very beginning, she really goes really well back to the past to say, where did all this begin, right? And I have to tell this story every day in my office. Okay, so instead of me having to always tell the story, how did we get this way? Go read her book, and she'll tell you from the early 1900s where things went wrong, and where corporations became like a person, with the 14th Amendment, that kind of thing in there in the book. That was really good. And where the corporations are making the decisions for us now, the people. So what I do want to talk to you about, Imanee, is human capital bond programs. You mentioned that in your book. Now, I've heard that before, but maybe others have not, don't know what that.
That's a newly emerging.
Yeah. Do you mind talking about that for a moment, to educate people what that really means? Because that's kind of a scary subject for a lot of folks who don't know.
It is. It is scary, and I think that it relates to this kind of marketing of our children, right? And also particular groups of people, where they're collecting data through these technology devices and being able to leverage that data in certain ways. So I think there's so much more happening behind the scenes that probably we're not comfortable really coming to terms with. That was one of the things that was, the newer things that I put in this last version of my book that was really hard to wrap my head around, right? That this is, if we think about that, a lot of this has been intentional. A lot of the things that have rolled out that it doesn't look like that when it's coming out, but when we look on, under the, what the small letters that they don't want us to read and all that, that there's so much more happening. And there isn't a lot out there on that. That's some of the kind of circles that I'm in, and the information of how we're connecting it. And I think for me, it was just about how do we connect that information to really understand what is happening with the data collection, and what kind of position is that putting us in, and in an economic class kind of way. Like, basically where they're trying to create a world of serfdom and to control the people. And so whatever they need to go to do that, that's ultimately what's happening.
Well, so many people say the word, when the world
level.
When the word conspiracy comes up, I've learned to just say conspiracy equals truth, because anything that I heard about years ago, people, oh, that'll never happen, that's not true. All those things have taken place already and still continue to take place. And the World Economic Forum, truth is secure. The World Economic Forum, if you're going to watch anything and tune in to world news, go to watch what those guys are saying. Everything that they're saying, this particular group connected to other world powerful groups is sending us down a rabbit hole of no return, guys. And we don't say this to stir trouble. Believe me, I say this to stir up what's going on currently in your life, and lift your head up once again and pay attention to changes. Nothing is by accident. These are all things happening in the world today. They're all by design.
Yeah.
This is a design agenda for all of us. And so please, as people, we must come together better. We must stop having disagreements. Even in your own house, especially, you must find peace within your own family and come together and form a plan. If you do not have a plan, you're letting other people make that decision for you. You don't have a plan. Someone is directing you down this path. And tell me if I'm wrong again, Imanee.
So yeah, just that kind of, you were, I think, going off and talking about how actually that this is not something that is not just
random events.
Yeah. And so I think it's really important for us to just take personal accountability for ourselves and our families at this particular moment in time. I think that's what humanity is asking for. That's part of the evolution process, is for us to really have that strength and that will to step into this new way, a different way of doing things.
Right.
And sometimes those different ways require that diligence and the time and effort and the resources. It's not always convenient, right?
Mhm.
But it's necessary.
Yeah, and convenience is not always the best thing to do things. Is there should always be from all of us some change that doesn't feel comfortable. There should be some resistance, guys. I don't mean with your pitchforks out in the street. What I mean is just because there's some new technology change and they said this is what you have to do, you have a voice. You have an ability to stand up and says, I don't think this is fair and I don't think I want to contribute to this. And you have a voice to stand up and stop. Because remember, people still have the abilities to make change as a group. But if we all stay as individuals, think I'm just going to do my own little thing and not worry about the rest of the world, that's when things change in a way that's very unpleasant. And that's where the world will keep going in a way that is by design by, let's say, a higher power running the world that may not be having us as their best interest.
Exactly.
So,
Yeah.
where do you see the future of where everything is going?
I actually feel really hopeful about the future. I do feel like there's um, more people that are connecting around this kind of these ideas that are emerging, where we're being, I would say, a more enlightened view of what's going on rather than being in denial. And I think there's people that are being moved to action. I don't think that everyone's coming along, but for me personally, there's a lot more clarity around the people that I'm creating and building out this new earth with. There's an alignment and there's a real strength in that alignment. And, it really doesn't take a lot of people to make change. It just takes a few people.
Correct.
And that is the ripple that will go out into the world. So, and ultimately we are the majority, but it's like you said, we need to be able to actually take action and use our voices and speak truth and not just go along with the masses. So I would say really about listening to ourselves. I have been so impressed with the amount of people that have surprised me compared to the people that I thought may have been aligned in the similar issues, that have been just taking a stand for their own sovereignty, for their own, on their own free will, and remembering, literally, we talk about remembering, putting ourselves together, remembering that we are sovereign beings and that we do create our own reality. So I think that there's a real hopeful time where people are returning to the land. They're remembering how to grow food. We're going back to some of these simpler ways that, but using the technology of today that connects us even on this call, but incorporating that so that it's bringing it back into balance. I'm gonna bring it back into this homeostasis state, not just in our bodies, but in the world.
Right. Get kids back like I was raised in Louisiana, back in the dirt, in the mud, and learning what it's like to come home and all your parents can see is your teeth in your eyes. That was my childhood. Kids, I'm surprised. Yeah, I live in the
Yep.
city now. How kids have never even had their feet in the dirt in the city. Never. Never just felt dirt between their toes, felt the grass on their feet. And I find it's very bizarre that they lose that connection to the earth by never having one.
Yeah. Yeah. So important to get grounded and give our children those experiences. And I don't think, as far as future visions, that the cities will be the best places to be. I think that they can be more challenging, but I think more and more people are moving outside of the cities and exploring different options, especially when there is more food security issues, that I think the cities are going to be some of the first places to feel that impact, and it'll be challenging because there'll be so many people.
Okay. So if you're leaving some last moment steps for moms out there, let's say there's the single moms watching you right now, and what would be some steps you could tell single moms? Step one, start doing the step 2, what would you leave
Well,
for women watching this
yeah,
right now?
read my book. Go to
Read the book,
mamalution.com.
right?
Yeah.
Mamalution.com.
I think, yeah, being open to the information and looking at what you said, where there's resistance, moving into those uncomfortable places, and really being open to information. So that to me is, I just kind of have this way of just saying yes and staying open to whatever is presenting itself as something to explore. So I think having that open mind, and then obviously making connections to your children. Sometimes it's starting a new habit, taking one thing at a time, and then habit stacking on top of that. So don't try to do everything. Commit to doing one thing, do that, add on to that, and just keep taking it little by little. And then lastly, I would say get support. If people are looking to connect with others around growing food, around homesteading, returning to the land, you can definitely check out our platform, which is at havenearth.net. And there's courses on there. There's people to connect with. There's groups. It doesn't run as fast as Fake Book. It's just about building relationships, authentic relationships. So you're not going to get the dopamine rush, but you are going to connect with quality people. And I think that that's the most important thing that we can be doing, is building real, authentic relationships that we can have for ourselves and that we can leverage in raising our children, especially as single moms.
Here's a place right here I looked up. You see that, right?
Hasn't. Oh,
Okay.
yeah. Thank you.
Okay. Well,
Yeah,
guys,
we have a lot of, we've done a lot of podcasts and talks with people.
well, that's me. It's like I started a podcast because me talking to other people about what I do is what I do all the time. But I like to hear what other people are doing, especially people who are making a change, doing things not exactly like the herd mentality is doing. Is you're making change, thinking of more or less like your children and their future, and not just their education, but what kind of education, and not just feeding them, but what kind of food, and really looking at the details. Because me as a doctor, I already see all the problems. I could sit here for the next 2 hours and tell you all the urine tests and blood tests and hair tests I get back of the kids loaded full of chemicals on every level. And like you said in the book, the endocrine disruptors, the things all disrupt their hormones and their thinking and their feelings. That's already there, guys. We don't need to discuss it, because if you're wondering if your kid has a bunch of chemicals in their body, the answer is yes. But the thing is, we all do. So please read our book, get a good history, get your feet on the ground, get your feet in the dirt. Go out to nature and just get your hands and feet and get dirty, get muddy, get into the earth. And then that'll give you an idea of where to start. So, but the history lesson she has in her book, guys, I can't strive enough that I was really impressed with her history, because she's like a lot of authors who read someone else's book, which led you to another book, which led you to another book. And so it's not, people says, well, I don't read books anymore. Well, the internet is not the place always to get the best information. If you read someone's book, they have done the lessons for you. They've done the research already. And so please get your history lesson, make a step forward, let your voice be heard. And Imanee, thank you so much today for being on the show, guys. And take a step forward.
Thank you.
All right. This is Dr. Patrick Price, and this is the Body Detective Show, guys. Thank you for watching.